Hello.
Hi, Kike.
Welcome to Rome, Bernd, and thank you everybody for being here. Today we're going to discuss a very hot topic and an interesting one. We've been talking in different panels about the future of the industry, how football needs to evolve to meet new audiences' needs, and especially how to connect with young audiences. I think it's one of the biggest topics that we have in the industry at the moment, and that's certainly something you want to give an answer to with your Superleague projects, for sure.
Thanks for having me, and yeah.
So let's start with a simple question. What's the status of the project now?
Well, the status of the project is that we, like a year ago, or more than a year ago, when I joined the project and the initiative, we started an extensive open dialogue to football stakeholders across Europe, trying to reconfirm our analysis that football needs change, as you just indicated, and whether or not the solutions we have in mind, tackling the European club competitions midweek, that they can actually be a significant contributor to a sustainable, future-proof European football ecosystem. That dialogue continues to go on, but is now in a way also to be seen in front of the backdrop of the ruling of the European Court of Justice, which we now have officially announced a date, which it will be the 21st of December.
And you said you joined the company 1 year ago. Can you take us through the work you've done this year, how the project has evolved since you joined, and what have changed from the original project to now?
Well, the original project was a proposal designed to be also presented to the world of football, but also to UEFA, to be considered, to be integrated into the current system. But instead of that, and we just talked about the Apple documentary behind stage, UEFA didn't even look at the proposal. They decided to, as they put it, to go to war. So that in a way triggered the court case I was just referring. But on the other hand, this initiative always was to be involved, to be adapted, to be consensus-driven, to try to include all opinions and all contributions of football stakeholders and players, politicians, club executives, whomever is contributing to a new design of the world of football. So yeah, it has materially adapted. Maybe the most prominent aspect of it is that we are fully committed to an open and meritocratic competitive system. We announced 10 principles where we set our guidelines, where within these principles we want to evolve and develop an alternative competition. And maybe the most fiercely criticized part of the proposal more than 2 years ago was the permanent membership, which we took off the table, and we developed the competition further in an open and meritocratic manner.
And going a little bit to the rationale behind the competition, why do you think we need the Superleague?
Well, first of all, maybe we can comprise it in two aspects. First, the governance aspect. We believe that the current system, with the obvious systemic conflict of interest of UEFA being the regulator, the gatekeeper, the sole commercial operator, is not fit for really driving the game into the innovation it needs. So why is every domestic league organized and run by their clubs, and they organize themselves in La Liga and La Bundesliga and La Serie A? But on the European level, it's still the federation who calls the shots and who has the ultimate decision power over the clubs who bear the entrepreneurial risk, as we all know. And the other part is that the potential of the competition is not living up to its potential, that the competition is not exciting enough for fans. We believe that during big part of the year in group stages, we don't actually bring onto the pitch fixtures who are exciting and who help us to continue to engage younger generations to watch 90-minute games and to engage them for a lifetime, as we have been engaged. But also because clubs accessing to European club competitions don't actually have the opportunity to grow and to invest and to become a sustainable club on the back of their European participation. The system of annual qualification only is not delivering the opportunity to invest in infrastructure, to invest in the women's game, to invest in academies in a way it could and it should be.
And you touch on the women's games, and I think it's an interesting topic also, especially now after the huge success that the World Cup represented. How are you thinking about it? Because I believe that there's been a lot of attention on the Superleague itself, but we haven't really talked about the women's game. What role does it play?
I think that was part of the phenomenals in communication around the proposal of the Super League 2 years ago. There were a number of aspects which haven't been discussed to the extent it should have been discussed. The financial fair play rules, the Super League initiative proposed back then, but also the women's competition, which from the beginning at inception was developed and proposed side by side. And I think the same applies to the women's game than it applies to the to the men's game. There is a potential to promote and to put the women's game to a bigger stage than the current system. There is a big debate going on this year that a lot of big clubs with big players and prominent famous signings recently haven't been even accessing to the main phase of the Women's Champions League. So do you really, is there really a better chance to promote the game by actually having the best teams play week after week on the biggest possible stage? Or is the format currently also depriving fans of the women's game to see the best football week after week? That's a question we would like to answer, and we think and develop the men's competition side by the women's.
And you're thinking about different incentives, because sometimes football clubs are not investing that much into women, so it's like a requirement to participate on the competition to have two teams.
But definitely, if you have a vibrant competitive system where you deliver on the best teams on a regular basis face each other, and you offer, and I think the women's game has an opportunity to gain a bigger stage if it's thought through side by side with the men's game. I think the incentive is obvious, and I think a number of clubs will make use of their brand, of their global fan base, of their infrastructure, of their stadium, in order to invest and to promote their women's section as well to a better extent than they are incentivized now.
Yeah. I think you also touched very good on the incentive and how to build the right incentives for the clubs on the government side, this economic sustainability. I'm sure media rights will play a key role in the competition and in the economics of the incentive for the clubs. A lot of people argue that media rights, sports media rights is a zero-sum game, and that creating this competition will not lead to a bigger pot of money for sports media rights. So it will not add more value, but instead it will take off the money from other competition. What's your view and your opinion on this? How are you thinking about creating extra media value for the Super League?
Well, I think in the past a lot of domestic leagues have claimed that they have created value and they have brought new investors and new platforms like Amazon and DAZN to the table, and they in a way absorbed with a new value proposition, a lot of budget. I was being in a TV company, RTL in Germany, who bought a lot of sports rights, and nobody told me, wait, there is an invisible 100% ceiling, you cannot spend more. I was always free to, if I liked the value proposition, I was always free to invest, and then I jungle with my budget and I invest more in sports rights and I buy less Warner Brothers movies. So the freedom, the entrepreneurial freedom of decide about whether or not sport is creating enough value as a broadcaster is not tied to a ceiling of 100%. And of course, we would like to, and we are confident that we can create value if we substitute like group stages, which is actually not generating enough followership and enough audience and enough engagement, with better fixtures and a more intense competitive situation amongst different European leagues, and telling an exciting story from the first match day when everything counts to the last match day when everything counts. And I think there we can prove and we can show, and we are confident about that, that there is a value created which is recognized by partners as well.
Yeah, I think one of the recurrent topics that I heard from you guys is that in the current system you don't have that many big clashes between teams. There was there's the statistics that I don't know, Real Madrid or actually Bayern Munich and Chelsea was the first time or they face each other like.
You can make a lot of examples. That I think one example was that Bayern Munich and Liverpool only faced in 2 fixtures in the last 70 years, which is hard to understand, and that Chelsea only recently played its first match ever in the Bernabeu. So yeah, there are a number of examples where you would say, why are we doing that if we see that young audiences who are obviously have a number of entertainment options, and there is gaming, there is Netflix, there is Disney Plus, all the streaming services which we all conveniently access to. But in terms of the football, we make it more and more difficult actually to access to the games. We make it more and more difficult and exclusive to have enough entertainment budget to follow all the football matches. We have to jungle with 3 or 4 subscriptions, and we make it difficult also for young audiences to engage in football. But once you have top matches, even in the group stages, they are there. But apart from that, they are watching less and less 90-minute games, and I think European football has the quality, has the firepower, and has the unique engagement as the only true global sport, that it has to be able to up his game and to present itself in an innovative, future-proof way. That is what clubs would like to implement, but then there is a monopolist in the way who says, no, I'm the only one who calls the shots. And this is now under scrutiny at the highest court of the European Union.
And I think we have 1 month still to know the decision from the court. If they fail in your favor, what's day one look like? So what are the steps that you need to follow to realize the project of the Superleague?
Well, in the end of the day, it's important to understand that the European Court of Justice is not judging about the Superleague. They're judging about the monopoly of UEFA. And there is either the UEFA, with all these inherent systemic conflicts of interest, is either reconfirmed or it is abolished. Those are the options. If it's abolished, and if clubs, and that's important, if clubs are free to choose their own entrepreneurial freedom and choose their own destiny, we would like to make a proposal to them. And this will be directly a result of the abolishment of the monopoly by UEFA. We talked to a lot of clubs, and of course we still owe them more detailed projects, because once we have the legal framework, and it's just respectful to wait for that ruling to have in our hands and to assess and then to apply to it and respect it. But once we have done that and we have a clear legal interpretation of the new landscape, we will go back to football stakeholders, pick up on that dialogue we already had over the last year, and we will explain them in detail what our proposal would be in terms of the competition, about the potential of the competition, also in economic aspects. Give them some color on our proposal regarding the club-run governance of this football competition, That will be an exciting time to, on one hand, make that proposal, on the other hand, invite everybody to continue to shape it, because in the end it will be most similar to any domestic European league which took over from the federation the right to run their domestic club competition.
So if I understood it right, you're trying to be a European competition always in parallel with not competing with domestic leagues? Is that the case?
Of course, that's one of the main misconceptions, maybe constructed misconceptions back then. This is not a breakaway league. This is a project which is perfectly compatible in calendar and in everything with domestic leagues. None of the clubs who are promoting these initiatives want to leave their domestic leagues. But it should be a possible alternative to the one and only European club competitions played midweek as of today.
And as an international league, it will be key to keep engaging audience 24/7, not only just on the game day. I think we're hearing a lot that digital platforms play a key role, especially in internationalization and meeting with fan needs. How are you thinking about your digital strategy? What role will digital play in the whole ecosystem of the Superleague?
Well, I think one task every club executive or football manager has on top of his to-do list or on top of his desk is how to engage and connect and interact with its global fan base. Everybody has a sense that people out there might watch your team, be a fan of that team, like the color of your team, but how can I really identify them, and how can I interact with them, and how can I cater them all the stuff I actually have at my fingertips and I produce and I can actually share with them. But the numbers, if you look at the number of social media followers, who are hundreds of millions for the best clubs in Europe, if you break it down to the number of identified fans, they actually have a living relationship, an addressable, exchangeable relationship. It drops down to a couple of 100,000. And I do think that tournament organizers or competitions could actually provide some sort of solutions, joint solutions to that problem. Every single club trying to conquer the Far East is really difficult and challenging. But it all comes down to an attractive, appealing competition that really generates global interest. And that's why we return to the main point. Are we offering on a European level the best possible competition, or can we find a system where audience around the world and potential fans of European clubs are engaged in a much more devoted manner and in a more appealing manner than we do it today?
And it's interesting because football it's interesting industry where you have very traditional passion fans that maybe don't want to change the game so much, and you see with any technology disruption like the VAR or any other changes that you see in the industry. And on the other hand, you have new audiences and you need to build to connect. How are you thinking about this balance between the traditional old fans and how to create a product that is more connected to younger audiences?
I think that the tradition and the history of the game is a clear asset, and it's not incompatible with moving on and trying to cater and to design the experience around football in a future-proof new manner. I think that's a sad fact actually. Last clear innovation on the European club level was the foundation of the Champions League 30 years ago. Those are cycles which are far too long in order to actually. And now everybody, back then it was controversially debated, then it was liked, and maybe now it needs another revamping. Also the English Premier League, I remember when the Premier League was founded, it was an outcry because actually it was a breakaway league back then. and now it's converted into a national treasure. So yeah, at one stage, we also need to prove in real, when it's happening, that it is living up to our expectations and to the expectations of the fan. But when that day comes, hopefully soon, it will be a pleasure to deliver on our promises.
Well, thank you so much, Bernd, for sharing your vision on the Super League. I think it's very interesting. We're going to be looking very closely how everything develops, and wish you the best of luck.
Gracias, Kike. Pleasure.
Thank you.